making yourself completely untargetable. It can be through so much life gain that they can't do anything about it. Strategies where you aren't winning, but you're essentially making their entire deck do nothing.
Now, for a good example of what is a prison-style deck, Stacks. Stacks is a prison deck.
Sure.
And all it's really concerned with doing is blanking your cards as best as it can, and then killing you with something at some point.
The prison deck would like to make sure that you can't play anything for the whole game.
Which is, in some way, almost the reverse of a combo deck, where a prison deck wants to reduce the card quality of all of your cards. A combo deck kind of wants to make their card quality go to infinity with the right combination of cards.
Exactly. So we have, so Enchantress is kind of a little bit of a gamble to play in an event in that Enchantress has excellent matchups versus a lot of the creature-based decks and very poor matchups against a lot of the combo-based decks. Tyrell, Kizer, and likely the winner of this will be punching himself a spot in our top 8. Now playing against Esper Stoneblade, which I have to think this is another very good matchup for Enchantress.
I think it's an incredible matchup for Enchantress. One of the things is, if a Enchantress of any kind, and the two kinds that are generally played are Argothian Enchantress and Enchantress's Presence. If either of those cards manages to get out, you essentially have something very, very similar to Elves with a Glimpse of Nature Resolved.
Right.
And that is absurd when that gets going. And it's no less absurd for Enchantress.
So this Enchantress build has 2 win conditions. It has Emrakul, the combination of Emrakul, Sarah's Sanctum, and Karakas as one way, which will eventually, and that one's one way where they'll try to completely stall out the game forever, and that's their inevitability factor. The second one is he is playing 1 Sigil of the Empty Throne, just 3 white for a rare enchantment. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, get a 4/4 Angel token into play.
Don't forget Words of War. He's got Words of War.
He also has Words of War. So he has 3 different ways to win the game.
You know what card I really like in this deck is Words of Wind.
Right. Well, Words of Wind really, so Words of Wind you oftentimes see also as any of the words really can lock out the game. So why do you like Words of Wind more than, say, Words of War?
Words of Wind can get you either an infinite or a quasi-infinite combo sometimes by, not necessarily infinite, I shouldn't say that. You can essentially lock out your opponent from being able to do anything in very, very fast succession. Because what you can do is return to your hand something like a Utopia Sprawl or a Wild Growth, and then they are forced to return to their hand something. And then when you cast your Utopia Sprawl or Wild Growth, it triggers another draw. So with Words of Wind, you can replace it. And if you happen to have another Utopia Sprawl or Wild Growth, essentially what you could do is, for a mana, you can pop one of their permanents for every mana you have. And most people, yeah. Now we get a mulligan from Lewis Corsa. What does Lewis really need to see here in order to make this happen? I think that he needs discard.
Yes.
Very, very quick.
He has 2 Inquisition of Kozilek, 2 Thoughtseize.
And then I think he needs Force of Will to stop a Enchantress of any kind. Any Enchantress on the table is just devastating.
He has 3 Force of Will. He has 1 Vindicate. His creatures are just the 4 Stoneforge, 1 V-Click, 3 Snapcaster Mage.
From the sideboard, he has a couple more things: a Disenchant, another Force of Will, Engineered Explosives.
A lot of dead cards game 1.
Utopia Sprawl on turn 1 from Tyrell, Kizer, Lewis with a fetch land for a Tundra.
So actually 3 ways to win from Tyrell is usually 1 more than most Enchantresses you see out of an Enchantress deck, is it not?
Well, I actually think that sometimes there's an incidental way to win. And I actually view the Emrakul as the incidental way to win. Because a lot of times what you do is you discard it to make sure that your deck doesn't run out of gas.
Right. So Ponder from Corsa, not shuffling, and off a draw. Kizer at this point, really early in the game, hoping to, and there we go. That is the perfect time.
Yes,
and
but no land, no mana.
That should be just fine, though.
Yeah, as long as he gets to untap without anything going wrong, he'll be in just fine shape.
Lewis has about 3 or 4 turns to push damage until Tyrell's going to create just a mess of things on the board. So Stoneforge Mystic would be great here. He's really, that 20, they've got to put a bullseye on that pretty quick. So fetches for Underground Sea. We've seen a good number of beta Underground Seas actually here at our Star City Sacramento.
It almost makes me think that there's just someone that's really good with a Sharpie. And we have a Ponder.
Ponder, so shuffling, cracking the fetch line to get a fresh top 3.
My favorite Ponder, the 3-moon Ponder. I see a Caracas that Swords to Plowshares and a land. Unless he needs land, I would be shuffling this away. He might need the land, though.
Looks like he does, and he put the Swords second to top. He will Inquisition his opponent.
I see a Utopia Sprawl, a
Miri's Guile, 2 replenishes.
And there's something in the top. Is that a Sterling Grove? It is a Sterling Grove. Oh, I would probably want to get the Sterling Grove.
The Sterling Grove was going to make things really hard for him. Because he has no shuffle effects, Miri's Guile is not too terrifying right now.
Miri's Guile is the cheap version of Sylvan Library.
Right, you get to rearrange the top 3, but you don't actually get to take any of them.
And he does take the Sterling Grove. And then a land from
so
Tyrell
Kizer
would be pretty amazing here.
Does not have any prison elements right now in his hand.
There's a Miri's Guile. Draw.
And they'll show their face soon enough, but
he definitely has a Utopia Sprawl in his hand.
Yeah, he might put another Utopia. He elects not to play the second Utopia Sprawl.
I don't know about that. I like casting
Well, because it's on a basic, I think it's really safe. To be noted that Lewis is not actually playing any wastelands, but yeah, I don't see a real reason not to play Utopia Sprawl here.
And he goes Miri's Guile. Let's check out what we got on top here. See Elephant Grass, Enchantress's Presence, and something?
Well, still no land to play them. Lewis, though, really not putting the pressure on, which is great news for Tyrell. We switched him for tokens to become the Star City tokens.
I mean, if that Utopia Sprawl were in play right now, is that a Wild Growth?
Yeah, it's a Wild Growth. Drawing a card.
Okay, 3 mana can cast an Enchantress Presence in hand.
And there's a Stoneforge Mystic draw. 2 Stoneforge Mystics for Lewis Corsa.
In for 2.
And yep, he's just got to put the pressure on now.
I actually think the game is already over.
In favor of Tyrell?
In favor of Tyrell.
Yeah, if he keeps missing lands, it's possible, but though the Elephant Grass is... So Elephant Grass has a cumulative upkeep, says black creatures are never attacking, and that other creatures have to pay 2.
Yep.
So particularly against a deck where Lingering Souls is its main threat, that's going to be a pretty big deal. Lewis just running the Jite and the Batterskull, no swords in the main. So no real way to push too much extra damage, and he's going to flashback Lingering Souls, though Energy Elephant Grass will probably take care of that soon.
There's a Forest.
That's land.
And I believe a Replenish?
He only plays 2 Replenish, so it can't be another one, as both those are in his hand.
Okay.
I want to say it's a Solitary Confinement, possibly.
That could be.
It's white.
There's a land.
Maybe there's actually another land, because I think there's a forest in the top 3.
1, 2, 3. Elephant Grass. He's got some mana floating. What does that do? Well, it means you can't attack with very many creatures.
But the good news is that it has cumulative upkeep, so there's no way he can keep it on the board very long.
It's true. How could he? Another Elephant Grass. Now it costs 4 mana to attack.
So, with the 2 replenishes in his hand, that's going to buy him quite a few turns. Elephant Grass has a cumulative upkeep of 1, I believe.
That's correct.
So Tyler may be content just to let the Elephant Grasses pay for them once, then maybe even pay for them twice. With Miri's Guile, he should be able to find extra lands. Pay them twice, replenish. He has about 9 turns of double Elephant Grass coming up. So sit back in your chairs. Tyrell, as he starts to gain control of this, may take a while to actually reach a point where he's winning, but he certainly is in control.
The primary reason that a controlling deck that wins primarily by attacking will struggle with a deck like Enchantress, unless they have Pernicious Deed, there are just too many cards that stay on the table that they can't touch. And all of those cards can create such a drastic card advantage engine that you just fall behind.
Right. Mirror's Gale. He's choosing to stack the triggers in such a way that he gets to Mirror's Gale before deciding whether or not to pay for the elephant grasses. He's going to choose not to play for them. I think he probably has found something pretty good.
1, 2, 3. Solitary confinement. Does that work?
Yeah.
Just gets I mean, does it resolve?
Oh, does that?
Yeah.
Yes, it does. And now you can't touch the solitary confinement.
Let's draw. I think that if I thought I saw an Enchantress's presence earlier, I was mistaken. Otherwise, I think he would have cast it at this point.
Yeah, usually, yeah, I believe he would have cast it.
And we're going to see the Stoneforge Mystic put a Batterskull into play, perhaps? Umezawa's Jite, that works just fine. Looking at this stage of the game, with what we see happening thus far, the one Vindicate in Lewis Corsa's deck is, I believe, the only way that he can beat Tyrell now, unless Tyrell isn't able to keep the solitary confinement in play.
Right. Tyrell should be able to keep a solitary confinement or an equivalently annoying card in play for the rest of the game.
If I was Lewis now, what I would probably do is just let Tyrell play out as much as he can to find out how he wins, and not show him any more of my deck. Even though he can perhaps presume most of the deck's choices, I would try to show him as little as possible.
Right.
Because, I mean, basically Tyrell is only going to lose if he messes up.
And Tyrell is casting Replenishes. Looks like.
Enchantress's Presence.
He's playing Enchantress's Presence. Oh, he discarded the Replenish, sorry, to the Solitary Confinement. And Presence, now all his cards will double cantrip. So despite the no draw effect of Solitary Confinement, he will be drawing plenty of cards a turn.
Now it's draw 2 with an... no, draw 2, that's just an Enchantress. Says go. End of the turn, we're going to see a Batterskull come into play.
Alright, picking up a Germ token, but still no real plays for Lewis.
I really think that the whole germ mechanic is a really clever idea from Wizards of the Coast. Kudos, Wizards. I'm not a fan of Batterskull, but congratulations otherwise.
I think Living Weapon was a great idea, and it's really fun, and they wanted to have a card, they wanted to make sure that Living Weapon, it was such a cool mechanic, they wanted to make sure that it saw some constructed play. When you have such a cool mechanic, you want to make sure it stays around, or that people, you know, I think one of the greater things that was always known is they had such a cool idea, for example, with ninjas, and, you know, there wasn't really much to do with them, but it was a really great idea. So they wanted to put, you know, something really good. They put Batterskull in, which is good, but turned out Mortar Pod also ended up being playable as a living weapon. So now we have discarding Moat, actually.
Oh, is that Moat? Okay, never mind. And that's the Utopia Sprawl, draw, and that's it.
and here, at this point, this is where Enchantress, I think Geshe referred to this as what I would call garbage time in a game, where the game is over, but it's not technically over.
Draw from another Utopia Sprawl.
We'll probably take Tyler, 4 more turns to win. 4 more turns, maybe even more. But
now remember, he can't even target the solitary confinement. Lewis can't even target the solitary confinement because that Sterling Grove is not going to let him.
Right.
Another Mirror's Gale.
And eventually Tyrell is going to resolve a second Sterling Grove, in which case everything he has will have a Shroud. And he discards for having drawn too many lands.
Until...
Lewis just passes the turn right back. He kind of sees the writing on the wall, but just wants to make his opponent go through the motions. At this point, both players will probably speed up the pace of the game.
Tyrell will probably be cautious enough to try not to do anything that will... there's the Sigil of the Empty Throne. Every single art enchantment he casts now comes equipped with a 4/4 angel.
Going for a quick kill. He discarded the Karakas. So he's not going to have his Emrakul Karakas engine online, though he doesn't really need it. It's time to start making angels. Utopia Sprawl.
Another Utopia Sprawl and an angel there. Is that a wild growth? I think so.
Oh, it looks yep. Wild growth, 3 more cards, another angel. Now, the angels might have a little bit of difficulty with that batter skull on the other side of the table if he chooses to put the batter skull on one of the souls tokens. In that case, Tyrell might have to go to his words of war to win the game.
I think he can probably put out enough angels that he doesn't care.
I suppose eventually Tyrell will put out, and Lewis sees no need to go through
this.
Let's
just stop. I see you got a Sigil of the Empty Throne. That's fine.
All right, so
sideboards.
Lewis will have a lot of cards to come out here. He will not need Swords to Plowshares. He probably will not need Umezawa's Jite. He will want, to be sure, we said Inquisition of Kozilek, which is very key in hitting one of the early Enchantress effects. The Enchantress deck without an Enchantress effect is much more vulnerable. He will probably board in the 2 Spell Pierces. He may board in any of the 3 Surgical Extractions. The 1 Disenchant and the 1 Engineer Explosives will also almost certainly come in.
I actually also like Sword of Feast and Famine for trying to nibble at things that if your plan is working, the sword can help nail it in.
Right. Cards he might not like. Lingering Souls in this matchup.
I don't like Lingering Souls in this matchup at all.
He needs something. All he really needs is if he's going to play a sword, he needs some creature that can hold a sword, and that's it. Snapcasters does a better job of that because it's also a spell. There's no reason for Lingering Souls.
I actually think that the Batterskull Stoneforge engine might be not correct in this matchup. I think it's too slow.
It might be too slow. In that case, though, he probably will have to keep some number of Lingering Souls and or Stoneforge Mystics simply because he has to actually put a clock on Tyrell.
I agree. He has to have something that he's doing that hurts them.
So maybe it is the Lingering Souls then, in the sense of if they might be stronger than the Stoneforge Mystic, while not very strong, still might give him the clock that he wants.
I actually might think just to say goodbye to both of them. That's too much to take out. You need to have something that's going to be dealing the damage to have it not be a slow-rolled game for Tyrell where he goes to a late moment.
Right, the only other thing that Lewis could possibly do is try to win off Jace the Mind Sculptor, fate sealing his opponent until Jace can ultimate him for the game.
On the other side of the table, Leyline of Sanctity is not unreasonable versus discard.
No, and
choke. Oh gosh.
He has 2 choke for the matchup, which is very good. Go ahead.
If he fears that his opponent is going to bring in mass enchantment kill, Karmic Justice is amazing, and it's even pretty good against simple disenchant or engineer explosives. And Blood Moon is another great card just to mess with the mana of an opponent that does not have particularly resilient mana against Blood Moon.
So remind us, what does Karmic Justice do? It's a card which really only sees play out of this deck.
Yeah, white 2 enchantment. Whenever a opponent destroys one of your permanents, you in return can destroy any one of theirs of your choice.
All right.
So let's pretend that you cast Karmic Justice, and then later your opponent blows up a Pernicious Deed.
Says Hush.
Or Hush, yeah. But destroys 5 enchantments of yours.
Well, then I could take all their lands
You can choose 5 permanents, any permanent you want, and just blow them up in return.
Well, does Karmic Justice count itself?
Yes.
Very nice.
Now, Tyler will have the advantage also of being able to take out a couple of the cards that are less exciting. Moat, for example, not an incredible card in this matchup.
No, there's not. There aren't too many things attacking, and many of those that are able to attack do fly. So yeah, Moat will almost certainly come out.
Elephant Grass is a card that you might want as a one of after sideboarding, just a tutor for, but you probably don't need 3 of. And the one of is a question mark.
All right.
Tyler looks very ready. Lewis looks like he's still thinking a little bit. I'm kind of wondering if he's butted up against the edge of his 3 minutes.
Yeah. Well, Lewis, I mean, maybe is he shuffling, or is he contemplating his opening hand? Especially the opening hand so he's decided to keep. Lewis appears to be mulligan. Lewis says keep. Tyrell immediately responds by saying mulligan, it looks like. So we know what kind of hand Lewis is looking for, a hand with a lot of disruption. What kind of hand is Tyrell looking for?
A land with mana and any enchantress. Because as long as an enchantress lands, he should roll over his opponent.
So really, if there's no enchantress in the hand...
Toss it away.
All right. Now, does a Sterling Grove count as a confined enchantress's presence?
That's more questionable. If your hand is strong, yes. If you're otherwise strong, I mean. If it isn't, then not so much. Because if it's the only card that you're going to have to get there, you're going to have to lose the card from the Sterling Grove to go find the enchantress. And then if it is then countered, not only are you down that extra card, because Sterling Grove does have the Enlightened Tutor effect on a stick, which means you're down a card. But then if you're empty afterwards, it's just really bad.
So Tyrell, immediately starting on a fetch land, checking to see if his opponent has Stifle. No, he does not. Probably will be Wild Growthing something.
I would love a Miri's Guile right now.
Miri's Guile would also be very good. Corsa with a Force of Will in his opening hand. And it's Wild Growth.
Wild Growth.
Corsa has, I think, Force of Will, Brainstorm, some white cards. I think it's either a Souls or a Mystic, which is what Lewis wants to be doing right now. He wants to get probably one threat down and then sit back and play the blue game. So he searches for Tundra. And cut. And we have
Ponder.
just a Ponder.
My favorite Ponder.
3 moons. And what has he sided that card? What has he sided in there? Is that a Perish he's sided in?
Perish is actually a reasonable sideboard card. It kills the enchantresses.
I see. And as you said before, Enchantress really has struggles to operate on Enchantress, so Lewis will probably want every possible... Seems like he's done his homework here. Every possible answer to an Enchantress effect, so Perish seems pretty wise.
We see a second land, giving Tyrell 3 mana with the Wild Growth.
Probably
Forest with Wild Growth and a Plains.
going for Enchantress's presence here?
Probably.
Because Lewis's mana is not blue, right? No.
Lewis's open mana is not blue.
So he's going to probably have to respond with the Force of Will here. If it is indeed... No, it's Sterling
Grove with a mana floating.
It's interesting. Why would you float the mana? Oh, you have to. There's no other way to do it.
There's no other way to do it.
Sterling Grove should be fine. Lewis probably will hang back and counter whatever it is Sterling Grove gets.
Maiden Phase Brainstorm, the best kind of brainstorm.
Alright, and he's found a fetch land off it. That interaction, one of the cornerstones really of Legacy. And he has found a Stoneforge Mystic in here, so he now will have a way to win. Playing and shuffling away the 2 cards he doesn't want.
I didn't believe it at first about main phase Brainstorm.
It's an instant. You're not supposed to do that with instants.
That's not what I was going to say.
Oh.
That a lot of the times, there's something about how the cards work in this format, how powerful they are. Getting them now rather than waiting makes it so that main phase Brainstorm is almost always, well, I shouldn't say almost always, is more often than not. That's a better way to put it. More often than not.
Well, oftentimes it's like, I mean, it is very similar to a draw 3. So if there's any of those next 3 cards that you want to cast, okay, if you're willing to pay 1 more mana for them, you can have them now.
Yeah, I didn't believe that up until the point where I started actually playing Legacy fairly regularly. And when you do a count, it's actually pretty much in favor, as long as you're not being irrational about it. Upkeep. Sacrifice Sterling Grove. Probably going to get the Enchantress's presence.
Choke.
That's not bad.
That will probably get a Force of Will. And as we call before, Stoneforge Mystic did get Sword of Feast and Famine here. He also has Ruined Halo in his hand.
Choke.
No second white. Choke will get the Force of Will.
Is that going to get rid of a Snapcaster, leaving the Brainstorm in hand?
I think that's what I think so. And we don't know what he pitched. He kept a... He pitched a Brainstorm, it looks like. Well, we'll see soon enough. Yep, he has kept a Snapcaster. The Brainstorm is gone.
Okay. Thoughtseize in hand. Let's see what you got.
And this is the kind of board state.
Oof.
I think this is exactly the kind of game that Lewis wants to get
Lewis
into.
can win this game.
There's no Enchantress effect. He's kept his opponent off Enchantress effects. His opponent has all the prison elements, but really, if Lewis can answer them one at a time, then he should be just fine.
Takes the Oblivion Ring.
It's fine. Solitary Confinement is pretty weak right now. Tyrell doesn't have the fuel to really cast the spell, so he's really down to one card, which is Ruined Halo.
And he can't cast the Ruined Halo right now.
Yeah, so he's playing off the top of his deck. And no plays. We'll bring Sword of Feast and
Here
Famine
comes the sword. And it's going to be picking up the sword, I bet.
Ooh, and a counter spell drawn, straight counter spell drawn by Lewis. It seems very strong.
She looks like a bird.
Discarding the Solitary Confinement.
Seems like a reasonable discard in this situation.
So Lewis at this point, like I said, can play the blue deck game and really not cast a spell for the rest of the game.
Enlightened Tutor.
It'll be fine. If it's something too terrifying, Lewis has Counterspell, and maybe to show us wrong a little bit, he does have that Snapcaster range he kept instead of the Brainstorm, will be extra strong with the Counterspell that's in his hand.
This is true.
From the looks of it, I would say Lewis knows what he's doing in this matchup. His sideboard seems to be, from the sideboard pairs to how he's playing it out, it seems like he's very prepared.
Enchantress's Presence.
That'll almost certainly get the first counterspell out of Lewis's hand. Moreover, with the Sword of Feast and Famine at work, Tyrell's hand will be whittled down to I believe about 0. And yeah, that'll see.
There's
not
the
the counterspell. One more blue mana. Lewis does not have the correct mana right now, actually, to cast Snapcaster into Counterspell. So instead he's going to play Lingering Souls.
Attacks for 3. Discard your Ruined Halo, I believe.
Yep.
Untap.
So he has Perish, Snapcaster Mage, Snapcaster Mage. In his graveyard, he has a Counterspell. I believe he has a Ponder from earlier on. I'm not sure on that.
Enchantress's Presence? Is that what it's going to be?
Right off the top, Enchantress's Presence.
That was an amazing top deck. Responds by a Snapcaster Brainstorm.
Yep, he's going to see if he can get that Force of Will off it.
Jace?
Well, it's no Force of Will, but Jace will... and there's that land he needed to, one more turn to actually lock out the game. No Force of Will, so Tyrell has, well, really only one turn. Lewis has enough damage on the battlefield. So Jace, Fate Seal, maybe he'll have 0 turns.
Fate Seal.
Keeping it on top.
You can have it.
That means it's probably not an enchantment.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Go to 5. I'll untap my lands.
I believe it's an Argothian Enchantress. I think I saw him flip it there, that'll bring us to game 3.
And he has 3 blue, so he can do Snapcaster Counterspell if he wants.
Right.
Oh, nope, he's Lingering Souls. I don't know if I like that Lingering Souls. Well, he knows what's on top. Empty hand knows what's on top.
Yeah. All roads lead to victory. So, 1-1, Tyrell and Lewis. So Tyrell, on a mull to 6, didn't find an Enchantress in his opening in his hand. Even if he had it, Lewis was ready with enough control elements to counter it, and I think, is one of the weaknesses of Enchantress, is that it really does need that extra card draw. Otherwise, you end up with a hand of Solitary Confinements. So,
yeah, absolutely. And if you're not having a working draw engine going, then it's just not all that exciting. And actually, even further, if you only have a single Enchantress going, a lot of the cards that you're going through, yes, you're cycling through your library, but you're not getting anything more impressive going unless the spell itself is impressive. So it's the second one that really makes the engine start whirring.
Right. The first one's a break even, and the second one is where your opponent just slumps back in his chair. I
mean, in playing certain control decks in the past, I've often, depending on my hand, let the first Enchantress happen. Let's say I've got a Pernicious Deed out, and it's only the second one that makes me blow the world.
Right. Lewis with no mass removal, I think we talked about before. We did see the 2 Perish out of the board, and the Inquisition of Kozilek. He's going to want the game to play out very similar to the last one. Answer the key threats, get a threat down. Now, fascinating, he kept in both the Lingering Souls and the Stoneforge Mystic, is what we learned. Not sure on the counts of each of them. We were predicting that he would side one of the 2 out, but...
Yeah, I mean, honestly, what are the cards we think he would want to run? I think Sword of Feast and Famine, we see that. Inquisition, we see that.
2 Perish.
I think Force of Will, we see that. 2 Perish, probably Zealous Persecution, that's 6 cards. And we were thinking Spell Pierce, maybe the Spell Pierce is wrong.
And Spell Pierce or Engineered Explosives.
Yeah, that's 7 cards. If we start with 4 Swords to Plowshares, there's only 3 more cards you're going to be running, so maybe you just shave things down a little bit.
Right, he probably, the Jete is probably gone as well. I think after watched that game, the Stoneforge Mystic, because of its ability to find the Sword of Feast and Famine, still I think carries its weight as probably your threat of choice.
Yeah.
You really just need to quickly get a threat and then grind them down. Tyrell looking like he's on a mulligan, perhaps? Shaking his head, at least. We'll know in a second.
Doesn't like it. Mull. And Lewis settling in for the final game here as Tyrell finishes his mulligan.
So these 2 players both undefeated. We are in round 5 of 7 at the Legacy part of the Star City Games Sacramento Open. As usual, person with 2 rounds to go, XO is a great place to be in. It most often leads to the ability to draw twice into the top 8. Tyler smiling and shuffling. Are we seeing him go to 5?
What do you think about, with Magic Online, how that influences the question of draws? On Magic Online, since you're not able to intentionally draw...
Well, in Magic Online, tiebreaker math becomes pretty important. Your cuts become incredibly clean because of the inability to draw. A lot more people end up staying in tournaments and not staying in tournaments as a result. You can have your second loss, and depending on when you get it, you can very much be live for top 8 still. At the same time, because of how the tiebreaker system works, getting a loss in your first round is very bad on Magic Online. A large number of mulligans going on. Both players seem to be chatting about it a bit. Let's see if Tyrell has something he can work with.
I'll keep, he says. Forest, Utopia Sprawl.
And he's really hoping, I guess, that he can resolve. So he has 2 cards in hand.
I bet you we see an Inquisition here.
In the last $10 draft of the day, we will be closing signups for silence at the end of this round.
For those of you who are just joining us, this is the 5th round of the Star City Games Legacy Open here in sunny California. We're in Sacramento, and both these players currently undefeated. Enchantress on the left, Inquisition of Kozilek sitting in here.
Enchantress on a mull to 5. If Lewis has the counterspell, we probably let him have the Enlightened Tutor. No second land for Tyrell. Lewis just with 2 Ponders, though. He actually, 2 Ponders, Lingering Souls, Sword of Feast and Famine, and I believe another discard spell.
Yeah, I don't mind getting rid of a choke ever.
No.
If I'm a blue player and I see a choke, I just want it gone.
Right, he's leaving Tyrell with 2 cards that don't do anything by themselves, so Tyrell has no threats right now. Could be he draws City of Solitude.
I love that card. Utopia Sprawl. White mana potentially floating. He could Enlighten Tutor right now and just set the top of his library, let's say, with an Enchantress's presence.
and then hope that Lewis has nothing else. And he's going to do that. And I believe probably almost certainly will be for the Enchantress's presence.
There it is. Now Lewis can't discard it. He needs to find a Force of Will. Not a Force of Will. Not a Force of Will.
Or a spell, a counter spell, but he won't have the mana to do that.
Doesn't have the untap mana.
If he has
shuffle it away.
Does he have a fetch land? He does have a Brainstorm in his hand, so if he finds a fetch land, he can look at more cards by not shuffling. If there was a fetch land to have, but I think it's just a duel, so.
I mean, it depends.
At that point, he's putting them back and he's drawing one of them.
The land. He did not have another land, so that was his only other land there. So I guess he kind of just was forced to keep it. And now he has to prepare for the Enchantress's presence coming into play.
All right, so Tyrell having an opening.
And plays the City of Solitude first. This is an enchant world, green 2. Players can only play spells on their turn, and I believe activated abilities as well.
So, clearing the way for the Enchantress's presence. And Lewis with an engineered explosives.
Oh.
Actually, it's a little late right now. He's choosing to shuffle away the engineered explosives.
He needs to have another land in order to make that work, right?
Well, I actually was interested to see
explosives for 1.
Explosives for 1 right here. And a potential explosives for 1 really could buy a lot of turns right now.
Absolutely.
The caveat is that Tyrell would get to resolve Enchantress's presence, but then would basically have to start drawing wild growths too.
Look at that Force of Will, a little late to the party.
So late.
Tyrell just waiting.
Yep.
When's it my turn to play Magic?
He's got all the time. He's not trying to end this game in any sort of rush.
I don't know that I like that opening with City of Solitude. I think I would have liked to open with the Enchantress's presence.
Well, if that happens, this draw, then Lewis would have gotten 2 Force of Will to City of Solitude, right?
Boom.
That is the danger, though. Now Tyrell's going to have to...
I don't mind him Force of Willing the City of Solitude.
No,
if
not
it means that I've got an Enchantress's presence in play.
Right.
Oh, is that a top deck?
It's a Sterling Grove.
Oh, and fetch another Enchantress's presence, perhaps.
Because he can't do it on Lewis's end step for a couple of reasons, really. So we're going to try again. Will this next Enchantress, this one, can't be Thought Seized, can't be... So really, it can't be Vendilion clicked, can't be anything. Tyler's going to have this Enchantress's presence.
Yeah.
Lewis is going to then hope up to set up an Engineered Explosives for 3 is probably what the next thing he's going to dig for.
Disenchant is another possibility.
Yep. Probably, yeah. Disenchant's great. The E on 3 probably...
Jace is not terrible.
Not at all.
Lingering Souls. Unexciting to me. You gotta get the party started at some point, though.
Yep, and Enchantress's presence is out.
Go.
So I keep going back to this play where Lewis didn't take the Engineered Explosives.
Oh, goodness. Lewis wanted to sack his fetch land at the end of the turn, but couldn't. Tyrell reminds him. City of Solitude. There was no real influence on how the game played out.
He can do it during his upkeep, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, City of Solitude, one of the classic cards of yore. A lot of people forget that it does do the activated ability thing.
Right.
And we've become used to that with some of the newer cards that have been printed which have the same ability. Attack for 2.
And there have been a couple green, a good smattering of green cards of that. There's Dosan, there's... Well, Defense Grid doesn't actually do it, but it's close.
Off the top, Elephant Grass, draw a card.
Another enchantment. Can we keep the game running? No.
Go. That card's gonna... No, yeah, it can go away. He can equip, and then afterwards have the mana for the Elephant Grass, and then untap all of that land. So the card in Tyrell's hand is gonna run away.
Yep, Lewis with a lot of dead counter magic in his hand. Tyrell's going to have to discard that card. So anything that Tyrell draws.
What was it?
It was a Ruined Halo. Yep, he names the wrong colors off Utopia Sprawl, which is a very difficult game to do correctly on this state. You know, your deck could give you really Sterling Grove or Ruined Halo or a bunch of wild growths, and you don't know what you're going to get. So
Now they're Lingering Souls. He lets the the Elephant Grass go away.
Still a difficult board for
have
Tyrell.
to say go. That's devastating for Tyrell. Sprawls are on white and green.
Okay. Oh, right. When you name a right, so it Sprawls and Emrakul. Probably little early to the party there.
Again, players, we'll be wrapping up silence in about 10 minutes. If you'd like to get into a side draft, we have 4 spots remaining in the last $10 draft.
A Snapcaster returning a Brainstorm, perhaps, or a Ponder.
Probably a Ponder. I would think. There's so many cards in his deck that don't do anything. That the greater.
Actually, what he has that doesn't do anything is his counter spells in hand.
Right.
If he gets a fetch land, he can get rid of them. Or he can get
it's
stuck
1,
with
2,
them on
3,
top
4,
of his
5,
library.
6. So Lewis Corsa actually has 8 points of power on the table, not 9. So another Enchantress's Presence. Draw a
He
card.
wants a land here. Particularly a Serra Sanctum.
And Zealous Persecution.
That'll kill him.
That'll kill him.
There we go. Lewis Corsa taking it down 2-1.
Despite a Mold of 5, so Tyrell Kizer probably a little disappointed in the result of that matchup. It's a matchup he's looking for. The Mold of 5 in the deciding game really came back to hurt him.
Yeah, I also think, honestly, that it's more important to have the Enchantress's Presence in play than to have the City of Solitude in play.
Right. Having 1 Enchantress Presence discarded really ended up hurting him. Otherwise, he would have had 2 Enchantresses Presences.
And then it's pretty much all she wrote.
All right.
Now, one of the great things about this, whoever's in the top 8, they're going to be going to the Invitational if they would like to.
All right, and Star City SCG Live is brought to you by StarCityGames.com. In case you haven't heard, yeah, you can now qualify for an Invitational through these IQs held at your local game store. If you're looking for an Invitational qualifier, or maybe if you don't have one, you should talk to a store owner and get them excited about hosting one. You can do that by emailing scgiq@starcitygames.com, or you can visit starcitygames.com/IQ. We still have a couple of them happening this weekend. We have one in Edmonton, Alberta at the Adventurers Guild, Belmont in North Carolina at RC Games and Toys, one in Montclair, California at the Mon Store, one in Virginia Beach, Virginia at Kaboom, and the last one in Fort Wayne, Indiana at Top Shelf Games.
Okay. Cool. You know, I think that if I were able, I would be trying very, very hard to go. It's in Baltimore? No, not Baltimore. It's in Baltimore.
It's in Baltimore.
Yes, okay,
this weekend in Baltimore.
This next coming weekend.
This next coming weekend,
God,
a week,
I really
less
wish
6
I could
days
go.
from today.
I mean, I have a killer standard deck. I would love to be playing it. My legacy decks are all fine. I don't know that they're great, but my standard deck, I mean, there's just so much that's awesome about the Invitational.
A lot of great prizes.
A lot of great prizes. Plus the times. There's a lot of really fun players that show up, and you'd be like, oh wow, all these people that have been doing really well, they're excited to play some good Magic, and they're there for 2 days of awesome like tournament play. So
it's really good.
3 days actually, really, to be more accurate, right?
Yeah, I mean, you usually have to fly in, the day before. Most people won't. So yeah, 3 days sounds about right.
So we're gonna take a short break, and when we come back,